clients of mine, and I'm not here to promote my business any, because to be honest, I'd like to start cutting back a little bit, but I've trained a really good young man, and he's doing wonderful too. So, but I have no intentions of retiring anytime soon. I just want to slow down because it gets busier and busier every year. So, I love horses, been doing this for 25 years. Horses, I've always made my living in the horse industry. I was a farrier for 19 years before I became a dentist. I know, crazy, huh? I'm truly horse crazy. So my whole life, I worked real hard on a pony ride and petting zoo starting at the age of 9. My parents hoped that would get the horse blood out of my system. Well, I worked my way up to foreman. So I showed them. I still am a huge enthusiast. I recently bought a team of Percheron crosses, and I do wagon trains now. I just went across Death Valley in a covered wagon train, went 100 miles, and that is really, really quite the experience. So, but my passion is my horses, and I love educating owners because there's so much good healing, and we can help our animals so much. We can also help save ourselves money, frustration, and time by taking a little bit better care of our horses, okay? So I like to start out by asking, I like to answer questions because that helps me to keep focused. So what do you guys want to learn from me tonight? Do you have a specific question about dentistry with the horses? Because then I can address that. Yes?
I have a miniature donkey.
Uh-huh.
A burro, I guess. And is that, I mean, I know they have to be taken care of also.
Yes.
But, have you done those before too?
A lot.
Oh, good.
Okay, and I'm gonna get into that, so I'm gonna write miniatures because that is a really interesting subject. Of all the breeds, miniatures, okay, I'm not spelling this right, miniatures.
Minis would have been just fine.
Minis? I love you! Minis! Okay. Miniature horses, I'll just tell you briefly and I'll get back to this, have the worst teeth of any breed. Okay, and I'll get back to that and I'll tell you why. I know the answer to that. Any other thing that you hope to take home that I can help you take home about educating about teeth? No? God, you guys know a lot. That's awesome. Yes, ma'am.
Do the slow feed bother their teeth?
Yes and no. Yep. Slow feed. Some it does and some it doesn't. Okay, which I'll cover that too. Okay. Slow feed, hay nets. Okay. Because I can tie all this in, and I love for people to go home with something they wanted to learn. Feed hay nets. Okay. Anything else?
Pellets versus hay.
Ha! That's a good one. I love that. Okay. This helps me keep focused here, and then I can cover what you guys came to learn versus hay. Anything else?
The elderly.
Geriatrics. Very good. Geriatrics. I'm not even, my spelling is horrible tonight, but we can phonetically sound that out.
The effect of age on teeth. I know they change with age.
That'll go under geriatrics, okay? So my number one question, when I first got into this out in the field was, and I've had to answer this question the most. What do horses in the wild do? They don't get their teeth bloated, okay? And you're right. Horses in the wild are doing exactly what nature intended them to do. So I'd like to just start answering that question because it has been, in 25 years, my most asked question out in the field. Horses in the wild will graze 12 to 16 hours a day of hard roughage food. So they are wearing their teeth at the rate that they were meant to wear them, unlike hay. Hay is the next best thing, but it is a processed food that we feed our horses. With hay, they're only using their lips and their tongue to put hay in their mouth, grind it down, and swallow it. But that took away the use of the incisors because they don't have to grab a hold, rip, and tear. Okay? So horses in the wild are doing exactly what they were meant to do. Also, horses in the wild will eat wood, trees. How come we don't have wood barns here? Because every horse will eat your barn. Okay? Wood is a natural part of a horse's diet, and a lot of people have either forgotten that or don't know that. I actually educate people when they say, man, every time he gets a chance, he's chewing up my tree. Well, every time you trim your tree, go throw him the branches, the limbs, the leaves, give it to him. You know, I've never once have seen splinters in a horse's mouth in 25 years. And I do between 900 and 1,200 horses every year. Never once have I seen splinters in a horse's mouth. So they're very capable of chewing it down. The bark in trees has very important nutrients, okay, vitamins, minerals. It's so rich with that. What are we always supplementing our horses with? Vitamins and minerals, okay? So it's somewhere in the past that you know, kind of got pushed on the back burner. Now I'm not saying go buy a bunch of plywood, throw it in your corral and think that's gonna feed your horse. That's bad because it has glue in it, okay? But anytime you guys trim trees, as long as it's non-toxic and doesn't have thorns in it, do your horse a favor and just throw that out there and let them enjoy, pacifies them and everything. So that's that number one asked question. And I'll just do a little basic anatomy on horses here, real quick. So, and this is where floating came from, and the term floating means to make smooth. I had to look it up because everybody asked me, why do they call it floating? It's a masonry term. And the masons, when they lay concrete, they float the concrete and make it smooth. So floating means to make smooth, okay? So horses have what's called hypsodont teeth. We have bouillodont teeth, like predators, dogs, cats, that sort. We chop our food mainly, okay? And what we have when we're adults is all we're gonna get. We chip them, we break them, we lose them, that's it. Horses have hypsodont teeth, which means they have a reserve crown of tooth. Their teeth will erupt, keep coming down at the rate of occlusion. They don't keep growing teeth. That's another big misconception. They erupt teeth. So when a horse is young, this is an excellent specimen here because I had the guy cut out, okay? That's the lower jaw. The teeth go all the way to the bottom of the lower jaw. See that? This is a young horse, okay? As the horse grinds in a circular motion, grinds the molars, this tooth, and he wears down the teeth will erupt up. So there's always an occlusal grinding surface, and they erupt at the rate of occlusion. So if the horse is missing a tooth, the opposing tooth will hyper-erupt. And this is where we get real serious dental malocclusions. So see this horse here, if you can see that far back, he's missing an upper tooth and the opposing one has erupted up. And I've actually seen that erupt into the bone and remodel the bone. You want to talk about a horse in a lot of pain and stress in his eyes. It's horrible, and sadly I see a lot of this. Not so much anymore because most of my clients are repeat clients and we've already taken care of this issue, and now they're just maintaining a good healthy mouth every year by having them floated annually. Their teeth erupt about 1/8 of an inch a year with very sharp enamel points. Domestic horses get sharper points than wild horses because they're not eating wood and tumbleweeds and roots and very hard roughage food. Horses chew with 1,000 pounds of pressure. We chew with 100 pounds of pressure. But remember, they're grinders. So their teeth will erupt their whole life until they've used up the whole root and the tooth falls out, or we have to take it out, or if they get periodontal disease, okay? So that's hypsodont teeth. So we have bouillodonts, hypsodonts. One other kind of tooth there is, just for information, is hypselodont, and that's what gnawing animals have. Beavers, rodents, anything that gnaws have hypselodont teeth, and they can regrow teeth their whole life. Their body just continually makes the enamel, cementum, and dentin, okay? So that's the difference of the 3 different kinds of teeth out there. Any questions on that? Nope? Okay. So, all horses' teeth are 1/2 an inch wider of the uppers than the lowers. You can see where it's offset. See See where it's offset? Okay. So when we go into float and they chew in a lateral circular motion, they'll chew on one side for a while, then swap it and chew on the other side for a while, unless they have a severe malocclusion that stops them from doing that. Then they're just gonna grind on one side. Sadly, it starts a whole domino effect of the opposite side getting a shear mouth, and it starts to lock up more and more and more, to the point where they can't move their jaw hardly at all. So, and those horses usually are very attitude. You could see it in their attitude. You could see some horses will take a bite of food and throw their heads up like they're trying to place the food on one side or the other in their mouth. And so anyways, so when we float, I come in and we float the uppers outside edges because their teeth are angled. They have a natural angle to the molar arcades. And we do the inside lower angles, okay? And we just get the sharp points off. And I do any balancing. He's got hooks here. See how much that hook hanging down? Now that's right where your bit rides, okay? Right in front of the first molar. So that bit's gonna come under here, and they have a lot of tissue and lip right here. Now this is where it can come into a performance issue. So that when you pick up your reins for either a turn or a whoa, you're bringing that bit right into these sharp hooks or sharp edges, okay, right there. Then you get a horse that roots. I'm sure if you don't have one, you've probably seen somebody out on the trail with a horse that roots, chews, flips his head a lot. Those are signs of a horse that may be uncomfortable due to teeth. It could also be because his back really hurts too. That can cause a horse to flip his head. So anyway, so that's what we do by floating. We make this smooth. But because these are wider than the lowers, here's where bitting issues come in. And who here has changed a bit because of a performance issue? Okay, that's pretty good. I used to come in with a box of 50 bits that I've gone over the years thinking it'll fix a problem. Doesn't fix the problem till this is fixed here. Because the horse has that great big jaw muscle here called the masseter. Most of your bitting issues come from back here. Because this is the tightest spot in the horse's mouth. You put a head stall that comes right here. The head stall pushes the cheek into very sharp points. And with this being the tightest spot in the horse's mouth, and that head stall's right here, okay, this is your bitting issue right here, not up here where the bit is. If you don't clean this up, you might get a little better result with some bits, but you haven't fixed the main problem, okay? So, any questions on that? Nope? Okay. So minis. Minis have the worst mouth because of irresponsible breeding. Okay, remember when nobody had minis? Okay, we're all close to the same age. Miniatures were not very popular, 40, 50 years ago. Then all of a sudden somebody started breeding minis and everybody wanted to own the world's smallest horse to go show in the shows. So they started inbreeding a lot, okay? They did not allow enough time for a big tooth to evolve into a smaller skull, okay? Miniatures have a lot of crowding issues. They do really fine until they're about 4 to 5 years old. Then all of a sudden, you're gonna start to see some issues as the teeth, they shed the baby teeth and the permanents come in, okay? Because they're so crowded. This is a pony. This is actually a pretty healthy pony. So there's your eye. Look at where this last tooth is. A lot of times if you see miniatures, they have bulging eyes. It's because that last molar is coming up underneath the eyeball and putting so much pressure there that it bulges the eyeball. And they also will have a nasal discharge after the age of 5 because all the permanent teeth are in, okay? And it's so crowded. Sometimes I'll see 2 rows of teeth because there was no room for the tooth to erupt in a normal place. And sadly, they're doing much better now. About 20 years ago when I started getting into this, I met a dentist and this is what he specialized in. He had a full collection of miniatures that had to be put down after the age of 5. Because to extract those teeth, you literally have to saw the head bone open and try to get them out of there because they were coming right erupting into the nasal cavity and the horses couldn't breathe. And they were always dealing with infections. So that's about minis, but there's a lot more responsible breeders now, and I'm not seeing that issue near as much. A lot of miniatures are very prone to an underbite, okay? Again, because of crowding in the molars. So, you know, if you're interested in ever getting a miniature, if you just lift up his lips and look at the front teeth, at the very least, make sure they're aligned, okay? So you can still get one, but just know you're gonna have to really maintain those teeth, okay? And I go around a lot before people buy horses, especially they're being told that the horse is a certain age, there's no papers, and they really wanna make sure that it is that age or that there's no dental malocclusion. I have people send me pictures. I'm always willing to help, okay? So, you know, you gotta use your assets out there and contacts. So that's that about minis. Any other questions about minis?
That goes for burros too, not just horses.
Burros actually they don't have that problem as much. Miniature mules do because they're getting it from the horse. But burros have been breeding for so long and their bodies are just better. Yeah, they just are. Yeah, I love working on miniature donkeys because they make me laugh. Half the time when they're sedated and I'm sitting on the ground and I'm working in their mouth, they'll start braying and I feel like my hair is going back, you know. I feel like they're laughing at me. So they're pretty cool. So, okay, so slow feed with the hay nets. That's really good because again, it slows the horses down eating. And I think my own theory, and I work with some vets too, that I get to see horses come in with ulcers. Ulcers seem to be such a big deal anymore. And we're spending so much money on ulcers with horses. And there's a theory, I'm not saying it's fact. Horses were meant to have food in their stomachs 12 to 16 hours a day. And when we've condensed that to a flake of alfalfa in the morning and a flake of alfalfa at night, their stomachs are getting empty. They got the weight on, which is great because it's a higher protein, higher fat and all that. But the stomachs get empty and then just like us, they get acidic. You know, the acid causes ulcers, okay? So I like slow feeding, you know, especially if it's a weight problem. If not, mine are free-fed Bermuda hay. So they can just go and eat whenever they want, you know. But if they're fat, that's not healthy either. So then you would need to slow them down or cut back. So the slow feed nets, I think, come in good for that. They can't urine on it. They don't waste it as much. So with the teeth though, I don't see so much problems with the teeth with the hay nets, the vinyl ones. But people that have done the metal screens, have you seen that? They make like a wood trough and they put like, what's it called? That hard wire. Okay, I see damage in teeth with that. They're excessively wearing the enamel off of those incisors. Not all of them, but some of them. So, you know, if you are gonna slow feed, I see the less damage with the nets than I do the metal, okay, for that. So, but I like horses to try to keep it as natural as you can. Horses were meant to eat with their noses on the ground, not up in a manger. That can cause problems too, not just for their teeth, because their jaws were meant, you know, the mandible was meant to go forward and backwards. Okay, when they eat, just like us, when we bend down, our jaw drops forward. When a horse can eat on the ground, to cut his grass, they grab a hold and they twist. They break it off, right? They grab a hold and twist. Chiropractically, that's how they reset themselves all day. Okay, so I encourage people, if you're feeding up high, they have to bring their jaw back. And most of the time, if you walk through a boarding stable, most of the horses will grab that flake of hay and throw it on the ground. They're comfortable to eat on the ground. That's what's natural. They were meant to stretch that whole vertebrae out and eat like that. They were also meant to drink with water below their feet. Now, we can't go do that, dig a hole, it'd just be horrible to maintain. But I recently learned that that's another way that horses chiropractically reset themselves, by having to stretch that far down below the feet. That's like us laying our palms flat on the floor, how good that is for your back, okay? To keep their vertebrae stretched out and open. They call it a natural reset for chiropractors. So that's that on the hay nets. Okay, pellets versus hay. Pellets, boy, there's a lot less waste. They seem to maintain their weight better because it's already halfway processed for them. As soon as it mixes in with the saliva, it's all broken down for them. So the stomach and intestines don't have to work as hard to try to break that down. Dental-wise, that pellet is mush by the time it hits the third molar. Complete mush. So he's wearing out the front 3 molars faster than the back 3 molars. So I actually, of years of pellets that I've got to go back and see now, the teeth are getting cupped. They're getting excessively worn in the front and not worn enough in the back. As long as you keep up with the dentals to keep that part of that balanced up, it's usually not an issue, okay? But their teeth and their guts were made to process STEMI roughage, okay, to keep everything working right. The STEMI roughage also helps with preventing impacted colics, but if a horse has bad malocclusions and he cannot break down the stem hay very well, okay, and he passes through over 2 inches long of hay, you can tell by looking at their stool, if there's a bunch of long hay in there, he's not processing like he should. Those horses are more prone to impacted colics because the stomach and the intestines have to work overtime to try to break something down that the teeth should have been able to do, okay? That's where a lot of impacted colics come from, is the teeth. When horses, we're gonna slide right into geriatric, when their teeth become expired or cupped, okay, at about age 18, horses' teeth start to cup. And that means that the 4th molar back, which is the first permanent tooth that a horse gets, it becomes cupped, okay, to where it's losing the chewing surface of the tooth. So that's the age that they start to have some difficulty processing the hay. Now, when I was a kid and growing up with horses, we never floated horses' teeth, ever, till the horse got skinny. Do any of you remember that? You didn't have to get their teeth floated till the horse was getting skinny, which was usually 15 and over, okay? And at that time, you know, the teeth were cupping, so he did not have the occlusal surface to break down the nutrients and break down the roughage from the hay, okay? So this is what's really good with the pellets, because they can no longer process hay, especially, we take such good care of our horses now. Usually anymore, I'm not recommending to swap from hay to pellets till they're in their mid-20s, which is great. When I was a kid, we'd never buy a horse that was over 15 because they were old and they were getting thin, you know? And part of that problem was we fed them hay the whole time. The molars were still good, but we never addressed the incisors, and we've taken away the use of the front teeth grazing, chewing on the wood, wearing down these at the same rate as these. Because remember, their teeth erupt their whole lifetime equally. So what happens is 15 years old, usually is a magic number. If you all put your front teeth together right now, like this, your molars don't touch, right? The molars is the first part of the whole digestive system. So a lot of times, they don't need to be necessarily floated as much as they need an incisor reduction, where I go in and I cut these incisors down because we took away the wear of this naturally with hay, pellets, cubes, grain, and I cut this down and it shuts the molars down. So now they have full molar occlusion, and ta-da, your 15-year-old horse is now gaining weight on less food than you were feeding him before. So a lot of times the incisor reduction is more needed than the floating. So does that cover it for geriatrics?
Got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I I have two older horses, one's 26,
Mhm.
that's not mine where I work out of,
Uh-huh,
and the other one's like 18 or 19.
okay,
We do have a dentist that's assigned that comes regular and
Yes.
takes care of them, but he has suggested that the pellets, we add some water to them
yes,
to make it easier, because one of them had two teeth completely extracted out of the back,
oh, yes.
so
That's very good, yeah, because there does come a time where even the pellets are too hard.
you know,
So adding water to the pellets, and I always recommend some kind of equine senior to be fed with that, because it does have the extra nutrients
you know.
that the geriatric horses
We
need.
use the low starch on.
Low starch, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I've
Racehorse
taken
stuff,
very
I
thin
call it.
older horses and just blossomed them up,
Yeah.
make them comfortable in the mouth, soften the pellets, throw some senior in there. Personally, I love Purina because they have spent millions of dollars on research, and I've seen the fastest, best results with that. But I know a lot of people that feed the Nutrina and the other brands, and their horses do great too. So, yeah, they need to have that when they get older, and sometimes softened and sometimes not. I also recommend a very small diameter with pellets. Now they have the big hard pellets, and then they have little tiny diameter ones that you can break with your hands. You don't have to really water those down.
Yeah.
And you know, Canyon State sells those, Stanley
Yeah.
Pellets sells those. So for the older horses that have very poor molar occlusion, that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I
for
met
that.
some, I met some.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you guys are looking for a dentist, I know that there are so many ads on Facebook and Craigslist now for dentists that, I'm just gonna really encourage you to hire somebody that is certified, or your veterinarian, or, you know, Arizona state law is, because I'm not a veterinarian, I have to be employed by a veterinarian, okay? I like this because if something goes wrong out there, okay, if your horse has a reaction to the sedation, the vet is right there to help take care of that. Anything else happens, the vet's right there, and it's the law, okay, that the vet has to be on the premises. Hand floating, okay, and I use power tools. Oh, first of all, when looking for a dentist, you can ask them on the phone, and I'm really gonna recommend this. Do you have a full mouth speculum? If they do not have one of these, please do not let them come on your property. Because if you cannot open the horse's mouth safely, see and feel every tooth in that horse's head, would you want your dentist working on your teeth if they didn't see or feel your teeth at least? Okay, the only safe way to do that is with a full mouth speculum. Number one instrument right here, okay? Number two instrument, a nice bright headlight, okay? Because there could be so many little things going wrong in there. Periodontal disease. I've pulled wire out of a horse's jaw before, bit down on wire. If you can't see it, and I've looked under the tongue, foxtail abscesses. So the speculum and the headlight, that is a must-have for anybody that's gonna work on your horse's teeth, okay? There's power instruments and there's hand floating. People that just go around hand floating, they don't, if they're not sedating horses, they do not need to work with a veterinarian, okay? I did this for the first 4 years of my career, hand floats, because the power instruments were not yet available, okay? And I could do a pretty thorough job with this, but after 2 horses, I was gonna call 911. It's a lot of work, okay, to get the mouth really good with bit seats, okay? And all riding horses, I highly recommend on the first 4 molars where we just round that up, make a nice little place for your bit to sit comfortably. Horses were not born with bits in their mouths, okay? So let's make them as comfortable as we can. The cavalry, the US Cavalry, I did a lot of history on this because I love it. They had their own platoon of equine dentists, and you never hear about that, but they did. And a lot of our instruments today are modeled after that. And they're the ones that discovered bit seats. And the reason is horses were chewing on the bit and excessively wearing their first 4 molars. And they made a nice rounded ramus right there. So the cavalry said, how about we help them out, make them more comfortable, drop our bits down a little bit, okay, and make them more comfortable. Well, it worked. The horses started performing better, okay? Also with hay, when they take a great big mouthful of food, unlike grazing, it puts a big food bolus right there, right at the beginning. Well, having that little bit of gap actually helped them to crush down the food better. So bit seats are a good recommendation for that. This power instrument right here was modeled after the US Cavalry, even though that this is electric and they didn't have electricity then. They actually had the foot-driven pedal like they did. I saw pictures of it, yeah. So this was actually modeled after the US Cavalry. They'd have two guys working on the foot pedal and spinning this so that they could grind and help load down the points. So that's pretty cool. So there we go. The most exotic animal I ever get to work on was a moose. I was really proud of this moose in Alaska at a zoo. Big abscess on the side of his cheek, big swollen spot. 3 other vets went and kept putting him on antibiotics. The antibiotics were making the moose sick. One of the vets that I worked for goes, I know a girl with some really cool tools. So they brought me in, they darted the moose to sedate him, put his head on a bale of hay, and that's pretty good antlers there. That's probably a 40-inch, about 40-inch, you know, not huge, but he's in a zoo. And so I went in there with a good headlight and a good speculum, and they have polyps in their mouth. It's kind of like a cow. So when I stuck my hand in there at first, the polyps, it's like, it just grabbed my hand. I'm like, whoa! But it's like I felt he was gonna swallow me. And it was really crazy. And then he let out this big, like that. And I jumped back and I go, are you sure he's not gonna wake up? Can we tie his antlers to his hind feet? You know? So they didn't. And the vet I was working with, he begged me to burn the picture because he stepped over the moose's head over the bale of hay. And he's got a hold of his antlers like this. I crawled between his legs, and I'm in there. And what I found was he was missing an upper molar here. And they have hypsonont teeth like a horse. So the opposing one had erupted into the skull and was causing a huge rotten infection. So he gave me some surgical saw wire, and I got behind the tooth, and I'm sawing the tooth to cut it down, okay? Cutting it and cutting it and cutting it, and then it got loose. And I thought, cool, we'll just take out the whole thing. I put my finger on it like this, and I'm pulling it because it's that loose. He rolled his tongue and swallowed the tooth. Oh. I was so mad. I so wanted that moose tooth. But it was cool. And 2 weeks later, that moose started gaining weight. He was happy, the infection went down, problem solved. But he had suffered for almost 2 years on antibiotics. It was gonna kill him. It was gonna kill him. So that was a pretty cool thing. Then they started having me do reindeer and llamas and stuff, so it was pretty fun, yeah. So,
You could have looked for the tooth.
yeah, I know, I have to stay there, right? Smashing all the poop as it comes out. Yeah, found it. So anyways, any more questions about dentistry? Yes, sir.
What about wolf teeth?
Wolf teeth, good answer, good question. So, we just got this skull here, very short time ago. This poor little guy got hit on the highway. So my friend and I went out and got his head, and has wolf teeth. There is a wolf tooth right there. The wolf tooth, this one fell out on this side. Wolf teeth are usually on the upper skull, okay, the maxilla, right in front of the very first molar. We always take these out because that's right where your bit rides, okay? They're very, very usually short-rooted, that's the root. And a lot of times the bit, you know, when you're asking for a whoa or a turn, will break off the crown. Now you've got a dangling root right there that a bit is doing this to. So a horse just sometimes just won't stop doing this, okay? So we always will take out the wolf teeth, that little thing sits right there. Take them out, and again, put in the bit seats, which makes the horse very comfortable. And a lot of people mistake canines for wolf teeth, okay? People call them the bridle teeth, or actually some people call them tusks. And only the males get canines. Females can get them, but they're usually very small. Okay, so these would be like female ones if they're erupted. Very, very small, a lot of times loose. If they're loose, I'll just take them out. The males get them right here, and these are bigger. So right behind the incisors, this is a female, this is a female, they're all females. Oh, this one has canines, right there, okay? It's their fighting teeth. When you see pictures of stallions in the wild rearing up, twisting their heads and aiming to bite the other horse here, okay? With those teeth, it's their killing teeth. And those can grow to over 1 inch long, and the back of them can actually be serrated a little bit. So when they do bite into something, it's with the canine teeth that, you know, they can do the most damage. If they hit the jugular or the carotid artery, if they hit the carotid artery, they've just killed their opponent. Again, or biting on a wolf or coyotes that circle the pack, if they can get a hold of them with those teeth and shake them, those teeth can do the most damage. So, and we never take canines out because the roots are about 3.5 inches long and they lie horizontal. So this tooth here, the canine, the root actually curls and rides up here. You would literally have to saw the bone open to take out a healthy canine, and they are tough. So I usually will cut them down and burr them and make them nice and smooth so your bit can go in and out of the mouth without hitting the canine teeth. Again, that can be real painful for a horse if your bit hits the canine teeth. So that's, hope I've answered any other questions that you want to know? Yes?
Is there anything special that you can do for a horse that is like got a severe underbite or overbite, whichever the way?
Yes, you can, because the teeth will erupt at the rate of occlusion, right? So if there's no opposing surface, it hyper-erupts. It will erupt twice as fast as normal. So if a horse has a severe parrot mouth, okay, to where it looks like this, overbite or parrot mouth, there's nothing stopping this from hyper-erupting down, okay? That makes it harder for them to eat because they have to open their mouth wider, okay, to get that food in there, okay? Then they end up chopping their food more than grinding their food. And a lot of times with parrot mouth horses, overbite horses, the molars don't line up. So the very first molar will usually have a very long erupted hook, and the last molar will have a very long erupted ramp, which even locks the jaw up more. So the best thing we can do for that is to balance the mouth, remove the big hooks, the ramps, cut down the incisors so the molars are all in balance, and feed that horse on the gravel. Okay, that makes him drop that lower jaw. I've met one horse chiropractor, I would have never believed it if I didn't see it. He actually corrected a horse so much, and I have pictures of before and after. It took about 5 years. He fixed a severe parrot mouth horse, and I never thought that would be possible. So, and he's not here, he's in Alaska. He's a human chiropractor, and I'm like, he blew my mind with that. I was like, no, you can't do it, you can't do it. Yes, you can, yes, you can. So, he proved that. Bits, I'll just talk real briefly. Because I see so much damage in a horse's mouth, and I never talk to people about bits unless I see damage from a bit. Excessive wear on the first 4 molars, that it's getting close to exposing a pulp. Horses do have pulps in their teeth, okay, like we do. But as their teeth erupt and pressure is given, that pulp will recede down into the tooth. Okay, so nature is always filling it back in with secondary dentin, so it's protecting itself. But if it is excessive wear on the tooth, you will expose the pulp. The horse will lose the tooth in a few years. So I always, anytime I see bit damage in a horse's mouth, I like to talk to people about bits. And just recently, I would draw on a piece of paper for people. You need to get a bit like this, like that. I finally went to Dutton, Greg Dutton. He makes Dutton bits in New Mexico. They're guaranteed for a lifetime. I asked him if I could become a dealer so I could help recommend a better bit for people's horses, only if I see damage though, okay? And because I like to fix problems. And when people buy a bit from me, if I go, man, you know, go show me your bit. Go get your bit, show it to me. Do you know that probably 20% of, at first, people had their bits on backwards, on their head stalls. No kidding, no kidding. You know, even snaffles where it was really pinching the tongue, hitting the palate. They go, would that be why he shakes his head all the time? I'm like, yeah, probably so. Or the bit was too narrow, you know, or the port was too wide and it was getting in there and making bruises on the bars. So it inspired me, let's fix these problems. So I really like Dutton. They guarantee their bits for life. He'll build anything I ask him to build at no extra charge, any width, you know. And so I've been helping people, you know, with what they tell me their issues are after the teeth are done. I will not even sell a bit unless I look at the mouth. And it better be to my standard or you don't get to buy a bit from me. I don't care who does the work, but if you don't clean up this back here, we're not fixing the problem. So, you know, like I said, I don't care who does the work, but it better be done right, and then I'll help you out with a bit, you know, for performance issues and things like that, for comfort. So I just recently got into that about 4 years ago, and I can't believe how many bits I've sold and people calling me back. And I guarantee these bits, you can try it for 30 days. If it does not work, I'll give you every penny back. The owner of Dutton Bits couldn't believe I'd do that. And I go, sir, I'm here to fix a problem. You know, because I have a bucket of bits at home that's this big. I swear I've got at least 50 to 70 bits in there, you know, and I don't want, and what can you get for them once you buy them? $5, $10, you paid $110 for that bit, you know, you'll never use it again. Your friends don't want it. So I want to fix a problem, you know, and I want people to be happy with that. So there we go. Okay, anything else?
How often do you recommend routine dental checks?
Routine dental
Once a
checks.
year?
Yep, once a year after the age of 5. I recommend that a horse gets his first dental before you bid him up, or at 3 years old, 2.5. Horses will lose 8 teeth starting at age 2.5. They'll lose 24 teeth from 2.5 to 4.5. So I recommend every 6 months from 2.5 to 4.5 to make sure that they're shedding those baby teeth off correctly and that they don't get one hung up or broken. Usually there's not a problem, but because they're not chewing 12 to 16 hours a day, they're not wearing those baby teeth off, okay? After that, once a year, and if they've been maintained every year from 5 to 15, 16, 17, I recommend an annual checkup on the horses. Just let's look in there, let's make sure you didn't bite on a rock, fracture a tooth, and half the time I'll go, he's good for another year. So every other year, and then well into their late 20s, sometimes we've gone as long as 4 years, but I still like to see them every year, just in case they do get that loose tooth with periodontal disease in there. Let's keep them comfortable. Let's not let their bodies fight an infection that they don't need to fight, because as we know, that's bad for our organs. It'll kill a human, you know, if your body fights infection for a real long time. And periodontal disease is one of the filthiest bacteria in your body. That's why if you ever been for open heart surgery, they'll make you go get your teeth cleaned now first. Did you guys know that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, because it's so nasty, it could kill you. Yeah, interesting, huh? I just learned that too. Anything else? Yes?
So you said you're trying to maybe scale back in some respects. So what's your availability, or this associate that you're training?
Oh, okay. He's available a lot. He's 24 years old. He's strong. He's worked with me for almost 7 years. And he started when he was 17 working for me. And his parents sent him to Alaska for an education, Camp Lisa. And so he's doing great. He just got certified in July. He's working a lot with Dr. Harvey now. And I worked a lot with Dr. Harvey, and I'm just kind of letting him step into my shoes there. So my availability is still pretty good. If you are going to use Dr. Harvey and you want me, make sure you request me. Otherwise, Brett Perot is doing awesome. I let him work on all my horses for some of his training, and I'm hard on him. I tell you what, he's doing a great job. So I also work with Dr. Vicki Baumler, and I work for Dr. Myers from Desert Mountain Equine. So those are the 3 main vets that I work for in the Valley. And I'm gonna stop doing all my out-of-town work. So still available, but wanting to scale back. So, yes?
Lisa, I think several years ago, you had I want to call a floating party at No Fly Zone.
Okay, okay.
And Dr. Harvey was there.
Yes.
doing spring shots.
Yes.
And you were there.
Mhm.
And you were floating.
Yes.
Do you see yourself doing that again this spring? Or anything in the future that we can put our name on a list and?
Oh, sure, yeah, just call Dr. Harvey.
Uh-huh.
And, cause if that's your vet, I always recommend people stay with their regular veterinarian.
Well, you were working with Dr.
Yeah,
Harvey.
yep, I do work for, and, but I am scaling back a bit. I don't like doing 12 horses a day anymore.
Okay.
You know, I'm more
It was
interested
fun.
in.
We had a good time.
It is fun, I know, we do, we have a good time.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about this, I love doing this, I love showing the owners inside their horses' mouths and really explaining things, because that's knowledge, you know, and if I educate you and you go trail riding with somebody with a horse that's flipping its head, you know, you're gonna educate them and go, you know, have you had his teeth looked at, because he might really be hurting, you know, and I love that,
I do too.
yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah, so, okay. All right, well, thank you very much, appreciate it.